أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وبعد. So we're talking about American Muslim youth, challenges and opportunities, right? So who are the American Muslim youth? In the opening, he mentioned that the Muslim youth population, if you will, those under the age of 40, in the description that he gave was 39%. If you actually break it down, the American Muslim population that's between the ages of 18 to 29 is 36%, compared to the general population of 22%. We are much younger than the general American population. Those between the ages of 30 to 39 are 23% in the Muslim community versus 17% in the general American community. Again, still a much younger crowd. Those between the ages of 40 to 54, the exact same number, 28% in the general community as well as the Muslim community. And finally, the 55 plus age group. The American Muslim population is 12% versus 33% for the general American population. They're much older, we are much younger. What does that mean? It means our population is growing in maturity in terms of its strength. You're young, you're going to grow and have a lot more impact a few years down the road. This is just a wave that's coming. In fact, the Chicago Fed, in one of its reports, Chicago Fed is a financial body, the Federal Reserve Board of Chicago, in one of their reports, they said that almost 40% of Muslims are just reaching the stage of financial maturity, where they're getting jobs, they're starting to have savings, and that financial maturity means they have money to spend. They are going to have an impact on the politics of this country, on society, on all of these factors, because you now have energy and you have money. You have the youthful energy and you have money to spend. This is a force to be reckoned with. They point out further on top of that, this is the Chicago Fed report, that over the past decade or so, since 9/11, the number of self-identifying Muslims has increased by 50%. The number of self-identifying Muslims has increased by 50%. You know, we say, oh, Allahu khairul makirin, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the best of planners. So 9/11, horrific as it was, a very bad tragedy for us as a nation, but one of the side effects of that was that people woke up. Young people woke up. It wasn't enough prior to that, maybe you're just sliding along and saying, you know what, I'm cool, yeah, I'm Muslim, I'm kind of Muslim, not really Muslim, it's all cool, it's all good. But after that, you were put on the spot. Spotlight's right on you. Hey man, why are you doing this? Why are you praying in public? Why are you wearing that hijab? At that point, you have to make a decision. Are you or are you not a Muslim? And the number of people self-identifying and said, yes, I am Muslim, increased by 50%. Alhamdulillah. These are all very positive trends, that the number of young Muslims is on the rise, both in terms of numbers and in terms of its strength, financial and otherwise. But at the same time, our youth face a lot of challenges. A lot of challenges. So in a study conducted by the Family and Youth Institute, which I am affiliated with, they identified challenges that Muslim youth are facing. This is surveys given to Muslim youth themselves across the country. And they identified 4 main areas of challenges. 1, lack of support. 2, challenges within identity and acculturation. 3, beliefs and values. And 4, discrimination and stereotypes. So what do these words mean? Lack of support. A lot of youth say that they do not feel supported by their community, by their parents, by their peers, and by the community, whether it's the masjid or whatever community they're in. They don't feel that they belong. And that ties in to their identity and acculturation. They're not very clear on who they are. For a lot of youth, when you think of many of the masajid, they are still stuck in some sort of cultural mode. That yes, it's a masjid, it's a Muslim American masjid, but you could have taken a masjid from another country and transplanted it, and it'll be exactly the same. Somebody getting off the plane from another country would feel so comfortable in that masjid. It's like, hey, there's no change at all. But that's a problem when you're growing up in America, because this is not an American masjid. This is a masjid that's reflecting of values and cultures coming from a different country. And for youth growing up here, they identify that as a problem. because the masjid is essentially giving them mixed signals. Oh, when you're outside in the community, you are a Muslim American. And so you wear jeans and shirt, that's great. You come inside the masjid, man, that's no cool. You have to put on the thobe or the shalwar kameez or whatever it is. And you're confusing the youth. They're like, okay, who am I? And there's so much pressure to conform sometimes within your local community from the masjid itself and sometimes from the parents. And that leaves room for confusion. And this is an area that we can clarify, that you can be proud of your identity. Wear a thobe, be proud of it at certain points, but also be proud to be wearing jeans. It's okay. It's not haram. How do you navigate this? And we'll talk about this a little bit later, inshallah. Beliefs and values. One of the challenges that we have going forth is that while we have an increasing number of youth who are self-identifying as Muslims, the religious literacy of the Muslim population is still very low. Religious literacy meaning understanding the basics of the deen, understanding what are the foundation and the pillars of our deen. And this is really important because, you may go through Sunday school, and I mean, how many of us have gone through Sunday school and you ask, what are the 3 things you learned? And you're like scratching your heads like, I don't know, I mean, we got beaten up a lot, but beyond that, we had to memorize a few surahs, but didn't really get much out of it. And then you get to high school, you get to college, and you're taking some philosophy class, and somebody's challenging you with some good questions of, does God exist? And putting, well, is God so strong that he can create a rock that's so big that he can't lift it himself? And you're like, how do I answer these questions? These are good questions. We should educate the youth to be able to answer them. But the religious literacy is very low. And therefore, whenever challenging questions come up, your belief gets shaken. And it's very easy to move you. That's move you from a religious side into non-religious, as well as within religious understanding. You have different types of understanding of Islam. We acknowledge that. There are people who have more this type of understanding. People have different types of understanding. You have different shuyukh who espouse different ideas, which is fine. Sometimes, you've got a wide variety of opinions within Islam. But how do you identify and move along as opposed to constantly jumping from one area to the other and you're going to the most popular sheikh of the day, right? It causes more confusion. Identity. Who are you? Where are you? Where are you going? What are you about? These are things to be solidified. Finally, discrimination and stereotypes. Youth point out in the study that they face a lot of discrimination. They face stereotyping, and we all would say, yeah, obviously, especially now with Trump coming on board, this is just going to increase a lot more. That people are going to pick on you because of the way you look, because of the way you dress, because of the way you act, the way you behave. And they're going to stereotype, even if they know better, especially with the new administration coming on. So these are challenges. What do these challenges result in? Again, a couple more studies done by the Family and Youth Institute. The number of young people who said, self-identified, nobody forced it on them, anonymous surveys, self-identified, they consumed alcohol in the past year, 46%. Muslim youth. Who had illicit drug use, 25%. Tobacco use, 37%. When you ask specifically about hookah and shisha use, 44%. Gambling, 30%. You ready for this? Premarital sexual activity, 54%. If you're getting pushed around, you're not clear on your own religious values, you're not clear on who you are, somebody comes along in college and high school and says, hey, let's try this, want to try a joint, it's really cool, makes you feel good, and you don't really have a good connection because you lack that support from the masjid, you lack that support from the parental group or a peer group, you're like, yeah, this is my friend. He's offering me something. He says, hey, let's go out to this particular place or do something else. You're like, yeah, of course, he's my friend. This is your guiding light, essentially. And when that guiding light is taking you in these places to do all these activities, you're going to go along. So it comes as no surprise that when your foundation is weak and you don't have that support, whenever a challenge occurs, you will go in the path that you are put in. All right, so that's all negative, downward stuff. What are the protective factors? Again, coming from a research background, what are the things that have been shown, that have been proven to be protective factors, meaning that they will strengthen you and help you overcome these challenges? Surprise, surprise. Parental support is the #1 protective factor. If parents are in tune with their children, if they're able to support their children in their different activities, that is huge. Imagine if some parent has a good bond with their child, such that the child feels free to come and ask the parent any question on the planet, and doesn't feel that the parent is going to say, this is a bad question, or this is so stupid. No, the parent's always there. Yeah, that's a great question. You know, we should go find that out. I don't know the answer. Let's go find out. It's like, hey, you know what? My mom, my dad is the gateway to knowledge. He may not know the answer. She may not know the answer, but they'll help me get the answer. And so when somebody is offering you a joint, when somebody says, you know, can God create a rock that's too big for him to lift? When somebody's asking you these questions and you can't answer, you will come back and ask. And that parental support becomes so huge in navigating these challenges and coming up with the best way to answer. Religiosity. This is extremely important for us, especially with Islamophobes coming out. Study after study has shown that the more religious somebody is, the less likely they are to go into extreme behavior. The more religious you are, and properly religious, because you're grounded in your deen, you understand the basics of your deen, you understand what you're about, it's very difficult for some nutcake to come and say, hey, let's go blow up a building. It'll get you into Jannah. And you'll be like, if you understand your deen, you'll be like, you're crazy. This is not how it works. If you go do this, you will probably not get into Jannah because you're killing all these innocent civilians. You have an answer to that. If you're grounded in your deen, you're supporting, you understand your purpose in life. And so it's much more difficult for somebody to say, hey, let's go gamble because we'll have a fun time. It's like, I'll have fun time for 5 minutes and then I'm going to land up someplace in the fire forever and ever. I'm not willing to gamble my life away. You have answers to these questions. So the more religious you are, the stronger you become, and the more pro-social behavior you exhibit. Study after study has shown that. Having community support, whether it's from a masjid or from the MSA, your peer group, is extremely important. That helps to guide you and support you in tough times and in good times. And it should come as no surprise to us. The Prophet ﷺ told us, Al-mar'u ala dini khalili, that the person is on the path of his friends. So if you have a good support group of friends in the MSA or at the masjid or in your neighborhood, and as they're doing good things, you will naturally also move along in doing good things. Mentors with shared values. That's another strong pro-social factor. That if you have a mentor or a guide, that can be a halaqah leader at the masjid, can be the guy who's running halaqahs at the MSA, or some uncle or ammu or a khala that you know, that you trust, because sometimes it's hard, let's face it, it's hard to go ask your parents questions. You know, sometimes the questions might be sensitive, you're shy, it's awkward, whatever the issue might be. But if you have this mentor figure that you can go relate to, again, studies have shown that greatly enhances pro-social behavior of young people. Having safe places is another factor of pro-social behavior. Should come as no surprise that if there's a place that you can go hang out where you won't be judged, it's like, all right, you know, your pants are too high, or hijab is on in a wrong way, or, you know, you've got makeup on versus you've got your haircut is a different kind. If people are constantly judging you, yeah, I don't want to go hang out there because I just get yelled at every time I go someplace. People are always judging me and putting me down. So if it's a masjid, if it's another place, you'll be like, I really don't want to go. And you walk away, and you lose out on that support. As opposed to if you have safe places where the masjid is wide and open and welcoming, that you know what, you are who you are. Yes, we may not appreciate what you have, but come as it is, we're not going to judge you. We'll talk about why there might be better alternatives. Great. And if you decide to adopt it, great. If not, you're still welcome to come. You feel welcome. You're like, you know what? All right, you know, they have a message. Everybody's got a message. Fine. But at least they're not going to judge me. They're not going to push me out. They're not going to force me to conform to some other person or identity. Having these safe places becomes important. And this is extremely important for people who are running the masjid. Very often our masjids are not safe places, unfortunately. Our masjids are very judgmental places where everybody gets judged, adults to young, everybody gets judged because you are religious, you are not religious, as soon as you walk in the door. And that's unfortunate because that just pushes people away and you get more of this unmasked phenomena happening, for good or for bad. So this is something for us. And I see a lot of young people in the audience. We may nod and say, yeah, that's so true. I've seen so many masjids where young people get into the administration. It does not solve the problem because young people are just as judgmental at times as old people. So it's not like, oh, these old people, they came from somewhere, they have these values. And well, young people are just as judgmental. We carry a lot of baggage as well. We have to actively work on ourselves to open our eyes and be welcoming and not just fall into some stereotype. Just as we stereotype others, we're falling into it ourselves. So in order to put all of this together into a cohesive framework, you need to have a paradigm shift in our approach to development. There's a whole field called positive youth development. And we actually have a workshop on that. It's several hours long, but how do you develop youth in a positive way? There are so many factors that you have to stack one on top of the other in a cohesive fashion that will enable youth to grow from when they're really young, toddlers at 5 years of age, to when they're 15 years old, to when they're 25 years old, as they grow into 35 and 55 and beyond. There has to be this holistic approach, which is multi-method and multi-model approach of development, as it's called. Multi-method because every person understands things differently. Multi-method, multimodal, what that means is that one, we have to do different types of activities. Not everybody likes listening to lectures. Some people like to do activities, experiential learning is called. You know, you play games and through those games you learn. Some people like to watch. So maybe it's watching a video and having a discussion afterwards, right? That's one way of doing it. Actually going through in terms of hikes or planning events themselves, getting people involved through the planning process. And yes, the planning might fail, but people would learn a lot. And this is, again, more pertinent to when you're trying to develop the masjid programming or any other youth group programming. Quite often for young people, they get stuffed in the back. It's like, all right, can you please just line up all the chairs? It's like, okay, great, that's all I'm good for. You know, I've got a mind here. I can help you more than that. It's like, okay, you can help more than that. Please make the coffee. No, you got to get people involved in a lot more than that and say, okay, what should the program be like? What is the input? What is the output? What are we trying to achieve with this program? What are the audience that we're trying to bring? How do we target that audience? How do we market to that audience? You're utilizing the brain power that young people bring, and with that, they feel ownership in that program. Their learning and development increases, especially if you had an older, experienced person coming through. Okay, he's starting to look at me. I'll speed up. What can we do? All right, I'll just give a couple of points and I'll wrap up with that, inshallah. So what can we do as parents? There's a whole parenting series of workshops going on. But spend a lot more time with your kids. For parents, spend a lot more time, quality time, not quantity of time. So if you're with your children at dinner table and you're constantly looking at your phone, it does not count, all right? So you have to have rules of from 5 to 8 p.m., no devices. Everybody puts their device in the drawer and put it away. That's it. Doesn't matter who calls, doesn't matter who texts. This is family time. You sit down, you discuss. You set a culture where at dinner we're going to discuss what happened during the day. What are the issues came up? And you be open. You bring up the challenges that you faced, that you'll encourage the children to open up and bring up the challenges. And you know what? One of the really nice things about this is that young people have said this so often. They're constantly looking for the right opportunity to speak to their parents. Because, you know, the parents might be a little grouchy right now, they might be a little busy right now, and you got to catch them at the right time to be able to ask the right question to get a good answer. But as parents, we're constantly keeping our children on edge. We're making them guess as to what is the right time. If you set something like this where dinner table is open conversation all the time, they don't have to guess anymore. They know, you know what, tomorrow at dinner, that'll be my time. I don't have to guess. That is our conversation time. It's set every night. I'm guaranteed time to speak. I don't have to guess and figure out whether I'll get an answer tomorrow. Right? It does a lot of things. There's a lot more that parents can do, but masjids, I mean, inshallah, Sheikh Sulaiman will be talking more about this, but the masjid programming has to be much more open towards the family as well as the youth. Sometimes the programming is towards certain members of the family, but as a family you can't come together. And that's problematic because you can't go home and talk about it because only one or two people actually attended. But if people came as a family and enjoyed the program as a family, they're going to go home and talk it over together as a family. It becomes a great bonding exercise. I mentioned about the culture of the masjid in terms of how we run the masjid. Quite often it's very judgmental in the sense that you're not allowed to make mistakes as a young person. You make a mistake, it's like, oh, we can't ever trust you to do this again. You're relegated to the back row. It's like, no, come on, people make mistakes. We all make mistakes. We've all made mistakes, and through our mistakes we have learned. So the culture has to be much more accommodating in allowing and encouraging people to try things. And yeah, mistakes will happen. Okay, live with it. Let's move on. Increasing social connection, assessing what the actual membership needs. These are some general comments, but membership of every masjid is different. People are coming from different backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds. People's challenges are different. We really have to recognize who the masjid audience is and be able to cater to them as opposed to having a preconceived notion of what this masjid is going to be. And regardless of the circumstances of the people, this is what you're going to get. That should not be happening. There's a lot more, but I'll stop with that. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum. So first, a quick summary, because there's some questions asking about resources. What resources can you use for different things, whether it's for youth programs or for families or for anything else? So as I mentioned, I'm with this organization called Family and Youth Institute. If you go to our website, thefyi.org, we have a bunch of resources that you can use online. You can get onto our email list, where on a daily basis we send out different articles, different things that you can use. In addition, Sheikh Sulaiman also mentioned the importance of marriage and building up your marriage and then the family. Not today, but tomorrow in room S104, we have a whole day of programming around marriage. Now, I see a lot of young people, you may not be married now, but if you're anywhere close to getting married, you may want to attend some of these sessions, how to strengthen your marriage. So you're well prepared how to, when you're getting into your married life, what are the things that you should be doing and looking out for to strengthen your marriage from day one, rather than 5 years in saying, all right, we're having problems, what can I do to fix it? So prevention is always better than cure. That was the FYI.org, and you can get resources there. And I'm sure there's a lot more online, but that was one. So here's a specific question outside of the resource issue. How best is it that youth mentors or directors can encourage non-judgmental atmospheres in a masjid without crossing the line of haram? So I don't think any one of us is saying that we accept any kind of haram behavior. That's not what we're saying. We're not encouraging any kind of sinful or haram behavior, whether it's inside the masjid or outside the masjid. It doesn't matter. Haram's haram. You don't act one way outside and you act one way inside. But the point of non-judgmental behavior is that somebody might be behaving differently than what you're used to. Just because they're different doesn't mean it's wrong. Just because they're different doesn't mean it's haram. That's one. Two, even if somebody's not fully practicing, today, if we are kind and gentle and welcoming in dealing with them, then perhaps they can get closer to the deen and be more practicing tomorrow. But if we are harsh and strong-handed and we push them away, there's no way they're going to get closer to the deen. So one important way for us to be welcoming is to understand and recognize the different circumstances of those outside of our own inner circle. We might be very familiar with the way that our particular subgroup dresses, for example. Somebody dresses in a different way, but if you've never actually known about it, if you've never seen it, then the first time you see it, you'll be like, huh, that's weird, and then you'll be left with a question. But the more you open your eyes to the different ways that people around you do things, you won't be shocked anymore. If the Hajj has traveled the world, she can probably tell you 100 different ways of sisters wearing hijab, right? So it won't shock her anymore because she's seen it. But somebody who sees it first time is like, is that legit? I mean, is that an okay way to wear hijab? Well, unless you're actually exposed to something like that, or you think about it, and you actually internalize it, That's when you become much more open-minded. It's the exact same answer when we tell people in rural America that Muslims are not terrorists. All you have to do is what? Get to know someone, get to a neighbor, understand more. It's the same thing applies to us, that when we're so judgmental against each other, the answer is get to know the other party, understand who they are, even if they're not physically close to you. That would be one very important way to start having a non-judgmental atmosphere in the masjid, where the masjid leadership actually holds programming where you're educating the members on so many different ways. Coming from a fiqh point of view, say, you know what, this is the way we do things in the masjid, but there are 5 other fiqh opinions that are acceptable. So if somebody comes in and starts doing something, don't jump on them. That is opening their minds. The fact that you have different types of food, clothing, different activities, that also will be helpful. Having joint programming with other groups, having joint programming that does different types of activities, as long as you have the backing of the masjid leadership, that's important. You can really do that. Having a movie night at the masjid is, to me, is really important because it really breaks a lot of stereotypes, because a lot of people are still in the mode of, especially those who might come up and say it's haram, they're the ones who come up and say the movies are haram and music is haram and all of this, and so everything that leads from it is haram. But if you have the masjid leadership backing you and saying, all right, we're just going to be watching this movie that's totally kosher, and it's going to be in the masjid, you start educating. It's like, why are you watching a movie in the masjid? It's like, well, not everything is haram. It's okay, it's acceptable, and here are the 10 lessons we're going to derive out of that movie, and we're going to talk about it. You start breaking these stereotypes, you're making it a much more welcoming and open atmosphere.